In a forsaken warehouse on the edge of Paterson's dead ground, Alex Carter takes a job to escape his debts, only to discover the chilling rules that bind him to a prison of shadows, where breaking them means vanishing forever. The warehouse in Paterson, New Jersey, squatted at the edge of a barren lot locals called the dead ground. It was a hulking slab of gray concrete, its few windows caked with grime, swallowing what little light dared touch it. I had driven 15 minutes from my cramped apartment, a far cry from the hour-long slog to my old job. After 3 months of unemployment, with bills piling up and my landlord's texts growing sharper, this gig felt like a lifeline. Higher pay, close to home, too good to pass up. I didn't ask questions when the offer came. I just said yes. I pulled into the empty employee lot 10 minutes early, the gravel crunching under my tires. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and rust. Grabbing my lunch from the passenger seat, I locked the car and headed for the employee entrance. A rusted metal door tucked under a flickering bulb. My stomach churned, not just from first day from something else. A weight in the air, like the warehouse was watching me. The intercom buzzed and the door clicked open. Inside, a small reception area smelled of stale coffee and mildew. A woman in her late 30s, with sharp green eyes and a tight ponytail, waited behind a desk. "Alex Carter?" she asked, her voice warm but clipped, like she was sizing me up. "Yeah, that's me." I forced a smile, shaking her outstretched hand. "Lila Monroe, warehouse manager, welcome aboard." Her smile crinkled the corners of her eyes, but it didn't reach them. "Let's get you started." We sat in her office, a cramped room with a flickering fluorescent light and a desk cluttered with papers. While I filled out forms, Lila ran through the basics: inventory tracking, shipping schedules, break times. Standard stuff, delivered with an easy rhythm that put me at ease. Then she slid a typed sheet across the desk, her smile fading. The heading read, "Warehouse Rules." "These are mandatory, Alex," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Not suggestions. Follow them exactly." I scanned the list, expecting safety protocols about forklifts or heavy lifting. Instead, I found 8 rules that made my skin crawl. If the lights go out, exit the building immediately. Do not use flashlights. Never work alone in any section of the warehouse. Ignore any sounds like voices or crying, even if they seem familiar. All personnel must exit the warehouse floor during the 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. breaks. No exceptions. If you get lost, follow the yellow floor lines only. No shortcuts. Never enter the warehouse during a power outage, even if emergency lights are on. If you see another employee hiding or acting strangely, do not acknowledge them. Avoid looking at the tall figure in the shadows. If seen, look away and walk in the opposite direction. I read it twice, waiting for Lila to laugh to say it was a prank for new hires. But her face was stone, her eyes locked on mine. "This is unusual," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "I know how it sounds," she replied, tapping the paper. "But every rule is there for a reason. Safety reasons. Promise me you'll follow them." 3 months of ramen and dodging eviction notices flashed through my mind. I needed this job. "Sure," I said, folding the paper into my pocket. "I'll follow the rules." Lila's smile returned, but it was thin, like she knew something I didn't. "Good. Let's take the tour." The warehouse was a cavern of steel shelves stretching to the ceiling, concrete floors marked with yellow lines, and the hum of distant forklifts. It smelled of cardboard and cleaning fluid, the air heavy with a chill that didn't match the August heat outside. Lila pointed out the break room, locker area, and my assigned section, electronics inventory near aisle 7. Everything seemed normal, except for the way her voice tightened when we passed certain aisles, her steps quickening. As we walked back to her office, her expression shifted again, eyes serious. "One last thing, Alex. Those rules, they're not just for you, they're for everyone's safety. Don't forget them." I nodded, but the weight of the paper in my pocket felt heavier than it should. Something about this place was wrong. I just didn't know what yet. The first week blurred by in a haze of scanning barcodes and pulling orders. The job was simple: track inventory, fulfill shipments, help with loading. But the warehouse itself was anything but simple. The air was always too cold, the lights too dim, and the silence between forklift beeps felt alive, like it was listening. My coworkers moved with a strange urgency, especially around 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., when everyone dropped what they were doing and headed to the break room. No one lingered on the warehouse floor during those times. No one explained why. Nate, a wiry guy with 8 months at the warehouse, was my trainer. He was quiet, his eyes always darting to the shadows like he expected something to step out of them. "Just follow the rules," he muttered one morning when I asked about the mandatory breaks. "You don't, you're gone." "Gone where?" I pressed, but he just shook his head and walked away, whistling loudly as he passed aisle 7. That aisle was the problem. Every time I worked near it, the air turned frigid, my breath clouding like I'd stepped into a freezer. Once, while scanning boxes, I heard a whisper, soft, garbled, like someone calling my name from far away. I froze, Rule 3 flashing in my mind. Ignore any sounds like voices or crying, even if they seem familiar. I turned away, heart pounding, and kept working. The next day, it got worse. I was alone in aisle 7, checking a shipment of TVs, when I saw it. A shadow at the far end, taller than any person should be, maybe 7 feet, its limbs too long, too thin. It didn't move like a person, gliding without steps, its edges blurring into the darkness. My stomach dropped. Rule 8 screamed in my head. Avoid looking at the tall figure in the shadows. If seen, look away and walk in the opposite direction. I dropped my scanner and walked, fast, toward the main aisle, not daring to look back. The cold followed me, prickling my neck until I reached the well-lit shipping area. That night, I couldn't sleep. The warehouse's rules weren't just quirky, they were hiding something. I grabbed my laptop and started digging. Paterson warehouse history. Brought up nothing useful at first, just articles about industrial zoning. Then I tried Paterson Abandoned Research Facility. That's when I found it. The warehouse was built on the site of the Halstead Medical Center, a research lab that burned down in 1964 after an explosion. 20 scientists died, trapped in the basement labs, where they'd been conducting experimental neurological studies. The reports were vague, but one article mentioned rumors of unauthorized experiments, things like sensory deprivation and electromagnetic brain stimulation. The land sat empty for years, called the dead ground by locals, until the warehouse was built in 1978. The pieces clicked together too neatly. The whispers, the cold, the tall figure, they weren't random. Something from that old lab was still here, and the rules were meant to keep it in check. On my second week, a new hire started. Corey, a cocky 20-something with a smirk that never quit. He laughed when Lila handed him the rules, crumpling the paper into his pocket. "What is this, a haunted house tour?" he said, loud enough for the break room to hear. A few workers glanced up, then away, their faces tight. Nate muttered something under his breath and left. I tried to warn Corey. "Those rules aren't a joke," I said during lunch, keeping my voice low. "People have disappeared here." He snorted, leaning back in his chair. "Disappeared? Come on, man. It's a warehouse, not a horror movie. They probably just quit." I wanted to shake him, tell him about the shadow in aisle 7, but his grin stopped me. He wouldn't believe me until he saw it himself. I just hoped he'd survive the lesson. That afternoon, at 3:55 p.m., the warehouse buzzed with the usual pre-break rush. Workers wrapped up tasks, moving toward the break room like clockwork. Corey, assigned to shipping, was labeling packages near aisle 7. I caught his eye as I headed out. "Breaks in 5, I said. "Don't stay out here." He waved me off, laughing. "Gotta finish this. Don't worry, I'm not scared of the boogeyman." At 4, the break room was packed. the air thick with coffee and nervous chatter. I glanced at the door's small window, scanning the warehouse floor. Corey was still out there, clipboard in hand, strolling between aisles like he owned the place. My stomach twisted. "He's not coming," I whispered to Nate, who sat beside me. Nate's eyes flicked to the window, then away. "He was warned," he said, voice flat. Then it happened. Every light in the warehouse snapped off, plunging the floor into darkness. The break room's lights stayed on, casting an eerie glow through the window. A low horn blared once, then stopped. Rule 1 burned in my mind. If the lights go out, exit the building immediately. Do not use flashlights. But Corey was out there, alone. I pressed my face to the window. Corey stood frozen in aisle 7, his clipboard clutched to his chest. Shadows moved around him, not one but 5, tall and thin, their long arms swaying like reeds in a storm. They glided without walking, circling him, their faceless heads tilted as if curious. Corey's smirk was gone, his face pale, eyes wide with terror. "Hey," he shouted, voice cracking, "this isn't funny." The shadows tightened their circle. One reached out, its arms stretching impossibly long, brushing Corey's shoulder. He screamed, a raw, desperate sound that echoed through the warehouse. The other shadows closed in, their forms blurring into a mass of darkness. Corey's scream cut off. The lights flickered back on. He was gone. His clipboard lay on the concrete, a small dark stain beside it. I stumbled back from the window, my heart hammering. Nate grabbed my arm. "Don't," he hissed. "Rule 7, don't acknowledge what you saw." "But I started, but Nate's glare silenced me. The break room was quiet, everyone staring at their coffee or phones, pretending nothing had happened. I sank into a chair, the rule's weight crushing me. This wasn't just a job, it was a trap. That night I couldn't shake Corey's scream. I needed answers. During my next shift, I slipped away from my station and headed to aisle 7. The air grew colder with every step, the whispers louder, calling my name. I ignored them, scanning the wall near the end of the aisle. There, a faint seam in the concrete, barely visible. I pressed it, and a section of the wall clicked, swinging inward to reveal a narrow staircase descending into darkness. My pulse raced. Rule 6 echoed in my head. Never enter the warehouse during a power outage. But the lights were on, and I had to know. I stepped onto the stairs, the air growing heavier, like it was pushing me back. At the bottom, a vast basement opened up, lit by flickering candles arranged in 3 concentric chalk circles. Strange symbols were scrawled between them in what looked like dried blood. In the center stood a pedestal with an ancient leather-bound book, its pages yellowed and curling. Footsteps echoed behind me. I spun around to see Lila, her face grim. "You shouldn't be here, Alex," she said, her voice low but steady. "What is this place?" I demanded, pointing to the circles. "What are those things out there?" Lila sighed, stepping into the candlelight. "You've seen them, haven't you? The tall ones. You're one of the few who can." She gestured to the book. "This warehouse isn't just a building. It's a prison. Those things out there, they're what's left of the scientists from Halstead. Their experiments opened something, brought things into their minds that changed them. When the lab burned, they didn't die. They became something else." My mouth went dry. "And the rules?" "Containment protocols," she said. "Each one was written because someone died. I'm the keeper. I maintain the rituals that keep them locked here. But the boundaries are weakening. They're getting stronger." She stepped closer, her eyes searching mine. "You can see them, Alex. That's why you're here. The warehouse chose you. I need a successor, and it's you." "No," I said, backing toward the stairs. "I'm not doing this. I'm quitting." "You can't," Lila said, her voice sharp. "Not now. You've seen too much. If you walk away, the boundaries could collapse. These things, they'd spread beyond the warehouse. Imagine them loose in Paterson in New York. They twist minds, cause pain, death. You saw what they did to Corey." My knees felt weak. "What do you want from me?" "Step into the circle," she said, pointing to the innermost ring. Place your hands on the book. The ritual will bind you to this place, make you the new keeper. It has to be voluntary or it won't work. I thought of Corey's scream, the stain on the floor. I thought of my empty bank account, my normal life slipping away. But I also thought of what could happen if these things escaped. "What happens to you if I do this?" I asked. Lila's face softened. "I'll be free. I've been here 10 years. It's time." The whispers grew louder, pressing against my skull. The tall figure from aisle 7 appeared at the edge of the circle, its faceless head tilted, watching. My hands shook as I stepped into the innermost circle and placed them on the book. The pages burned under my fingers, symbols crawling up my wrists like insects. Lila began chanting, her words sharp and guttural, in a language that made my ears ache. Pain exploded in my chest, like something was clawing its way inside me. I gasped, gripping the book tighter. The candles flared, their flames stretching toward the ceiling. The shadows along the walls writhed, testing the boundaries, but I felt them now, not just as fear, but as presences. Dozens of them, each distinct, each hungry. The tall one was the strongest, its curiosity sharp like a blade. "Push them back," Lila shouted. "Use the connection." I didn't know how, but I focused on the edges of the circles, imagining walls of light holding the shadows at bay. The pain eased as the entities retreated, their whispers fading to a low hum. I stood straighter, sweat dripping down my face. The tall figure lingered a moment longer, then vanished. "It's done," Lila said, her voice heavy with relief. "You're the keeper now." A week later, I stood in Lila's old office, my office now, watching the parking lot through a grimy window. Lila was gone, her car vanishing into the night after the ritual, leaving me alone with this place. The warehouse was my prison, its boundaries tied to my mind. I felt the entities constantly, the tall one in aisle 7, the whisperer in the east wing, the cold spot that drained my strength if I lingered too long. Every day I walked the chalk circles in the basement, reciting words from the book, refreshing the symbols with paint that smelled of copper. The work was easier now, the ritual's second nature, but the weight never lifted. I hadn't left the warehouse for more than 10 hours at a time. When I tried, the pain started, a dull ache that grew into agony like the building was pulling me back. A young woman crossed the lot, clutching her purse, her steps hesitant. Sarah, the new hire. I checked my watch. 7:50 a.m. The tall figure stirred in aisle 7, sensing fresh blood. I pushed it back with a thought, the effort leaving me dizzy. The other entities stayed quiet, but I knew they were watching, waiting for me to slip. I grabbed Sarah's paperwork and headed to the entrance. She looked up as I opened the door, her dark hair tied back, her eyes nervous but determined. "Sarah?" I said, forcing a smile. "I'm Alex Carter, warehouse manager. Welcome to your first day." "Thanks," she said, her voice small. "I'm a bit nervous. First warehouse job." "Don't worry," I replied, leading her inside. "We'll get you trained." We went through the forms, the tour, the usual spiel. The warehouse hummed around us, its shadows shifting just out of sight. When we returned to the office, I slid the rules across the desk, my face hardening. "These are mandatory, Sarah, not suggestions." She read them, her eyes widening at Rule 8. "Avoid looking at the tall figure in the shadows." Her fingers trembled just for a moment before she folded the paper and nodded. "Okay," she said softly. I watched her closely, searching for the spark of recognition, the fear that meant she could see them too. The warehouse was already testing her, just as it had tested me. I leaned back, the weight of the book in the basement heavy in my mind. This place wasn't done with us. It never would be.